Hi, I'm Dr. Christopher Newman. I'm Professor of Space Law and Policy at the University of Northumbria in Newcastle in the United Kingdom. I'm also International Space Law Advisor for Cold Star Technologies. I listen to the Cold Star Project.
This show is for entertainment purposes only and is not what is termed professional advice. The Cold Star Project is proudly presented by the Operational Excellence Society. Cold Star Tech is a supporter of the OPEX Society, and Jason Kanigan is a member of its board of advisors. Talk with us at Cold Star Tech to find out what we can achieve together with your Lean Six Sigma or Operational Excellence programs. And check out opexsociety.org to learn more. Hey, we're back, and I'm super excited to introduce Jon Reyes to you. He is a copywriter who I have known for a very long time. Now, I've been a copywriter for over 25 years, since the mid-90s when I first started studying it in college because I thought it would be cool. It turned out to be a lot of work, but I've made a lot of money for myself and my clients with copywriting over the years. And so I have discernment, and I know that Jon is a great copywriter. He had a long history as a freelance copywriter, and then he was Brian Tracy International's lead copywriter for a while, and then started his own business, and he's been doing that for 9 years now. He's been doing Profit, Inc., which is kind of cool, and Copy Blueprints, of course, which is the thing that he's most well known for. So I ran into Jon again, and we hadn't talked for a few years. I first met him on a forum way back in probably 2012. So, we've known about each other for a long time, and I wanted us to connect and talk about what's working in copywriting today, what it really takes to build a great offer, and just teach business owners what working with a great copywriter is like and what it takes. You can't just walk in and say, I want to hire you to Jon or myself. We're going to ask for your bona fides, basically, and find out whether you actually have what it takes to create a great offer. A copywriter is not enough by themselves. They can do a lot, but we need an environment that is set up for success to begin with. So let's tune in for an exciting conversation here with Jon. And we'll be finding out, again, what's going on in the copywriting world, what's actually working, how he structured offers, things like that. So, Jon, welcome. Jon here is a copywriter who I've known for a long time, like 10 years maybe, something like that. We go back to the OG days of the Warrior Forum. We know what the wild west, we're in the wild west of internet marketing. It was the wild west way back then. And we learned a lot. And I've followed along with Jon for his journey, and we just got in touch again, and we're talking about some things that I was like, wow, you need to be on the show to explain what copywriters really do, what the process is like, what working with somebody like you or I, who, I've got 25 plus years as a copywriter, you're about the same, right? What it's like working with somebody with that level of experience compared to somebody who's churned out a bunch of templated letters at $500 for some people and maybe gotten some results, right? But it's just a little different. So why don't we begin, Jon, by having you share your story, a little bit about where you started from and how you got to be where you're at today.
Well, I'm not nearly as experienced as you, Jason. Actually, it's been about maybe a little over 9 years, and kind of hoping you wouldn't mention the Warrior Forum, because I'm kidding. That's where all the
I
good
feel
great,
the same, but it's true,
Hey, that's where a lot of old school persuasion was born, that really translated more so into social media, of posting value posts and trying to get people to follow you and not being so aggressive or needy on there. So a lot of cool stuff we learned from each other back in those days. But I guess the Clip Notes version, how I started was, Clip Notes version, I basically grew up in a very high crime rate neighborhood in Southeast San Diego. Some people don't think San Diego has any high crime neighborhoods, but that's the complete opposite of true. So growing up, the people we grew up around had guns, badges. That people we looked up to had, were in the military, law enforcement, or they were athletes. Some of the people we looked up to were people who went in jail, the tough guys and all that kind of stuff. I was kind of the introverted, creative, kind of dorky kid growing up. And when I hit high school, I found my niche. I started to assimilate with high school kids who were of less integrity, got into the party scene, broke out of my shell, and it was getting into kind of the rock star party life. Before I graduated high school, I got into drugs, and I got mixed up into gangs and a bunch of stuff people would never really guess about me the way I am now. So by the time I started to graduate, I was really, really throwing my life down the drain at a very young age. And my dad said I either go to college or join the military. And college wasn't my first choice, but I figured it might be a safer route for someone with my attitude and that whole thing. So to kind of really throw myself on it at the wolves, some of the people in these party days really ended up in a lot of trouble. Some of them got shot by other gang members. Some of them went to jail. Some of them just really had to run away or clean their life up. So I decided to clean my life up and ended up really immersing myself into some of the old school legends, the Brian Tracy's, the Tony Robbins, the old spiritual leaders, people who came from nothing to becoming great entrepreneurs and salesmen and very high level, personal growth leaders and all these things. So I think maybe almost over a decade, I was just hitting the books, learning to breaking out of my shell into a contributing member of society, how to be more professional, a positive force for good, building self-esteem, my health and fitness, and started to get into other things and physical hacks. How do I become more athletic and compete? And over time, I really, really actually made my way through college and had a very good college career. And then I heard about, I wanted to be a salesman. So I studied all the old school salesmen. Then over time, I heard about writing copy. I ended up hiring an internet marketing coach who we were focusing on back then, I think 2013 or so. I was building affiliate blogs and selling other people's stuff and made some commission, but I had a good friend who mentioned copywriting passively as I was growing up, and I met him through college. And my mentor back then, one of my internet marketing mentors told me, hey, I could really write. Why don't you just focus on becoming a copywriter? And I kind of took it and ran with it. So I used that same energy and focus and drive that I did to pull myself out of the crazy party drug life or whatever, and I put that into writing copy. Then came the books about marketing. Then I started to study all the copy greats, and then I started to write all sorts of test projects and just experiment and practice, and all that personal development and all that health and fitness obsession I used to become a better person, I applied towards copy. And I guess to sum that all up, the craziest part is I think 2014, I was starting to really hit the ground running as a copywriter. And some of the people I studied in personal growth, personal development, health and fitness, law of attraction, these guys eventually became my clients. And it was kind of out of nowhere. I think part of it was because the way I wrote and the stuff I knew and what I used as a personal philosophy, the way I wrote and clients I ended up working with and positions I applied for or whatever, ended up attracting these people. And guys like Brian Tracy and law of attraction experts, other people I've ghostwritten for, some guys who really dominated the mastermind world, were people I attracted to me as clients through my copy. And, lo and behold, these were people I studied well over 15 years ago. And it was a really crazy coincidence. And at the time, I was really their target market. So things kind of picked up from there, and from there, I never looked back. It's been almost 10 years later and still a really, really strong run. So,
yeah. It's exciting, isn't it? It's you look back on yourself 20 years ago and look at today and go, wow, there's such a big change there, a big shift. Let's talk about writing for industries that have a high need for compliance. So you and I have operated in these fields. There's technical, financial, right, medical. There's just stuff that you can't say. It's not like, again, those scrambly days of the Warrior Forum or whatever, where, in my case, I had a 15-year corporate executive career and I'd made a hell of a lot more money than I made online working for myself those first few years, right? But that feeling of, wow, I sold something for somebody, you can't really replace that, even as a salesperson working for a corporation, right? It's very different when you write something and it pulls,
So now we've got these industries where there's a large degree of compliance, and there's a lot of new folks that come in and they struggle with these fields with a high level of compliance now. Let's talk about a specific example that you're involved with now. And you know, it's FDA registered, this particular thing, and what you've learned in that experience.
It's a totally different ballgame. It's so like I mentioned, my two things were kind of the personal growth, development, entrepreneurship industry, then health and fitness. And over time, you realize it's two totally different worlds. If you're selling personal growth, coaching, how to become a better entrepreneur, it's kind of very much the words, what you say, how you make people feel. Then we have the medical, the health and fitness industry, where it's way more regulated, and for good reason. And recently, I've been involved with the company. I've been with them they came to me for a small test project, and they came to me. I think they were doing low to mid six figures, and now they're, you know, doing 200K a month, and I'm still with them. But it was an amazing product. The copy and the marketing and the strategy obviously was falling short. Their experience, I could kind of pinpoint why that was so. And the tricky part was they came to me, and it was an insulin pen protection device, and they spent a ton of money. It was originated in Israel, very, very high level business people. They spent a ton of money on scientists in Israel and in the US to study it. They got published in the American Diabetes Association, the journal, whatever, the ADA, and they had spacecraft technology and all sorts of amazing stuff in this product. And I'm thinking, my belief in your product is enough for me to get this off the ground. You know, the reviews, the customer satisfaction rate. So ultimately, you know, the compliance around it it's just, the credibility is just so much more powerful compared to a lot of the competitors out there. So you can't openly say on Facebook and all sorts of things, and FDA, you know, spacecraft technology, all these amazing scientists' names. I mean, you can, but it's pushing the boundaries. And the ADA, the journal, that's a scientific journal that's known globally. So, you know, they came to me for a test project, and initially the part of it was really understanding how to connect with the audience. You know, this doesn't just go for not just a side tangent, right? Not just for copy, not just in marketing and, you know, one-to-one relationships personally and professionally, even in dating and all that stuff, is how do we communicate with the other person? So they didn't really have a strong presence. So I needed to understand who their target market is. How can we put our name out there? Does our target market respond to conversational copy? You know, what are some big ideas we can encompass? Do we teach them a bunch of stuff? Do we just sell them a bunch of stuff? And where was the middle ground? So over time, it was just, you know, one project. And I said, I can pinpoint a bunch of the low hanging fruit, and you won't even have to pay extra money to market it. I'm just going to redo your entire email series, and we'll talk then. And then I just did that and split tested a couple of the advertorials. That thing started to convert really well. We just automated it, and then we kept growing. And then from there, it was just like, hey, just help us grow the company from the ground up and build the voice. And it's been one of my favorite clients in a while. So the tricky part is this is for many industries. I think this is a little different because it's not so much typical internet marketing or information marketing, because it's technically a medical device, technically not.
Yeah.
But the funny part is the whole thing, right? You hear it in info marketing, all sorts of Facebook ads we get is what's the middle ground between compliance and our credibility? We have amazing credibility. I mean, the product name is directly on the journal, FDA, you can look that up. Spacecraft technology, the scientists literally validate it. So obviously it became a good selling point. We're building it little by little, and it's, hey, we're just going to put the ADA logo, FDA logo. We're literally going to cite the scientist's name and put them on Facebook ads. And overall, there was some tricky stuff to finagle. Super credible, you know. It was like we didn't have to push it super hard. Like, hey, I mean, that was part of my involvement of building the voice and the attitude and the integrity. But over time, it did get a little tricky. I don't want to dive too deep into it, but I think this can happen in any industry, any business you're running. But we actually got some cease and desist from the ADA, the American Diabetes Association Journal, I think is what it's called. The scientific studies were in there. And I think it was because we used their logo or some of the way that we were phrasing it. And we got quite a few of them. So, some of the guys are really pushing it. I'm just like, we're just going to reword it. We're just going to take that out and we're going to hold it in integrity, but we're not going to risk it. I think it was funny because some really good health marketers have a ton of respect for the great ones in the industry, but the compliance and all that stuff, sometimes there's a big gray area. And I felt like we were 100% compliant. And that was a little tricky part, that's, that was interesting.
So even though we think of compliance as mostly black and white, but there's still a gray area. And then even when you think you're in compliance, as you found out, you can discover other interested parties don't agree, right? And and they're going to do something about it. So be willing to adjust. In the best projects that I've worked on as a copywriter, what happened first was, I think what you did here was we took money off the table. It was like, look, we're going to commit together to a goal, right? Improving the performance of this particular thing by X% or something like that, right? On conversion. And we're just not going to stop until we get there. Is that cool? Right. And so, you went in with that. I'm going to do some proof of concept work, right? Up front to show you that we can begin to move in that direction and get good results, and then negotiated the agreement later. How safe do you feel copywriters are in adopting that kind of approach as opposed to a pay me first?
I think it's, you mean like from their point of view, like a copywriter trying to take that
go get a client, right?
I think that's a confidence thing. It's,
okay.
I mean, if you hire copywriters to sell your own stuff, Jason, I'm not sure if you have, or if you have clients that you need to recruit copywriters for, there is that attractive quality of a copywriter who comes and it's not all this swaggering of like, this is how much stuff I produce, this is how much I charge, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's really competitive now. I mean, it's 2023 at the time of this recording. A lot of it now is like the money, this is how much money I make as a copywriter, this is what I charge. And I've been in this, I mean, not as long as you, but a little over close to a decade now. And if you could charge whatever you want, I could say I'll charge you 10K. I charge 10K for emails. Like, how many people pay it? None.
Right.
So exactly. When you have the confident copywriter who comes in there and is like, this is what I always do. It's like, I'll say I'll have some really great marketing and stuff that I can back up, right? It's like that whole, sounds cocky, but I talk trash if I can back it up kind of thing. But I'll stop halfway and I'm just like, we'll just start small, and people are going to talk a big game nowadays, and I'll just prove it. And I think that's an attractive quality. And when copywriters come to us doing that, for if we need help on our own stuff or for clients, I think we feel the same way. And you and I understand the power of copy too. So I'd highly recommend taking that approach and looking farther ahead. Like if you're confident, like this company that came to me, I was really confident in them. So I'm like, I want to get involved really long term, but from a business perspective, you don't want to be super eager, right? It's like finding the girl of your dreams and you're just so excited that you scare her away.
Right.
But it was like, hey, long term, this could be very great for both of us. And I would recommend other copywriters do that too. Look at the long term, if you want to do a commission or a revenue share, your involvement, and you would actually really, really like working with the company, hold back on the money. And if you can just start off small and then prove your worth, then the sky's the limit. So if it's, you want to ask for 10K for a big project, you want to start with a tiny project for 3 or 5K and prove your worth, and then go from there and then talk about money. And some people go for that huge one-off payout versus like little by little.
Right.
And if you look at a lifetime value of, I really want this client, I really want a 10K project, versus like, that was cool, we got some commission, versus like the approach where it's more systematic. Like, hey, I'll just
Mm-hmm.
do a little bit here, get some rewards there, and a lifetime value instead of 10K plus commission could
Yeah.
be like 150 grand plus commission over the course of a few months. And
Mm-hmm.
it's that whole thing. I think it's a great integrity just in general, health and fitness and what financial spaces operate like that. Like, I want to see your talents, and when if you get us paid, then we'll pay you. I would encourage other copywriters to come with that confidence. And if you don't have it yet, like, just call a mentor, call someone who'll get your back and keep that win-win mentality. Of course, it's about money. Like, hold your ground and like, hold your ground, do your best, and just let your work speak for itself. You can't win everything, right?
Yeah.
There's some ego nowadays, especially it went from like Warrior Forum, where it was more of a smaller scale thing and more intimate, versus like social media. You post something and hundreds of thousands of people can see it. So I would just say great swagger and confidence is great, but at some point you just cut it off and just be like, I'm just going to prove it to you. And
and I agree. The lifetime value of the longer term relationships where you're not looking for the big hit today pays off so much more, like by a factor of 10 or more than going in for the money right now. And it's easier to convert those clients. Even Jay Abraham talks about de-risking things like that, right? And it's in your long-term best interest. Well, cool. Well, let's talk about repulsive copy for a minute. I am a master of this. I've been writing it that way for a long time, of writing copy to make the wrong people go away, right? And this really ties back to Sandler training, consultative selling, the concept of shrimping, where you're going through a bunch of leads or prospects and you're throwing away everybody except for the ones who fit, right? And if you took out everyone out of the boat, right, who isn't a fit, you're going to be left with the shrimp, the really good ones, right? So you talk about in our notes here how having the right kind of copy attracts the best audiences and pushes away those who aren't worth it, which made me think of repulsive copy here. So talk to us a little bit about your use of that approach.
It's funny. This is it's just different applications in so many different avenues of like marketing and stuff. But I kind of want to shift this back. I think this is relevant. This actually example would be relevant to pretty much everyone on the planet, whether or not you're even in business. But part of it is, let me tie an example to like who's a well-known influencer that I actually, who's like well-known nowadays? I don't know. Let's just say Tony Robbins or something. Right? I've written for very similar people on his level, and I'm pretty sure everyone knows him. But it's that kind of copy of if you imagine the up and coming Tony Robbins, who's like, I'm invincible, I teach all of this, which is like, I think that's probably like when you get to a 6-figure level, you probably won't go beyond a 6-figure level if you have that aura of invincibility, where it's like, I'm the best, I can help anyone, and whoever I can't help, too bad, that's your fault. Then there's a certain level where it's like, actually, this is my personal story. I was actually one of the wimpiest people you probably would have thought. I'm not saying Tony Robbins was like this, but it goes for any company that uses a name, a face, a backstory, right? Not even personal, even like a health product. Like, this is how meek we started. We were actually the underdog. People were a lot better than us. We wanted to quit, but thankfully we found, help from a marketer. We like really sucked it up, and we just dumped our last $5 in our marketing and building our name, and thank God we blew up and we learned from our mistakes. And those kind of flaws it's really going to make the people who resonate with that story really fall in love with you. Like I think at some level Tony Robbins started to reveal weaknesses about his like his family, and had some abusive mom and all sorts of crazy stuff. And that's when people really started to fall in love with them. It was like, oh man, I really love this guy. The personal connection. Now that I just hear Tony Robbins, like he's having a seminar called, I don't know, Awakening. I don't know what it's stuff. Sorry, I didn't mean to offend, but like what's his Awaken the Giant
within
or something. Now it's like, who wrote that? Oh, Tony Robbins. It's not, I don't even remember the product anymore. It's like, yeah, I'm in love with that guy now. But the people who are are thinking like, oh, he had struggles with his mom and he was actually broke before, like I'm not really into that thing anymore. And that's the kind of people you don't want to work with, right? Because they want that superficial thing. But the people that really fall in love with your story and your flaws are the ones who are going to stick to you, and they're going to be the ones who will follow you for years. And over time, it's like, Tony Robbins, I have a new product, and they're just thinking, I'm going to buy it because I love his
care
story.
what it is. Yeah.
It's the
I
same.
have people in the sales training field who would buy whatever I put out, right? Yeah, it's true. You've got a phrase here, John, in our notes: superiority creates skepticism. Explain that. What does that mean?
It's the same concept. If we go from like Tony Robbins to I don't know, something that's more practical. I don't know the whole truth or the whole backstory, but Amazon, for example, it was Amazon admits their shortcomings, right? It's the same concept of, I'm amazing and godlike product or brand, buy from me. It's also like Tony Robbins, the story of his flaws and the abuse of his previous. It's Amazon's like, hey, we mess up, right? We actually aren't the most expensive people. We'll sell stuff at a discount and we know it, but we have really high quality stuff for our prices. We're going to deliver super fast, and we mess up. That's why we have amazing customer service. So that takes away from that superiority. So it's human to human. It's not business to customer, business B2C or B2B. It's a human to human connection. And honestly, I think it's the same way for all of us. On a whim. I mean, not on a whim, but to backtrack and me sharing my story of how I became. How I really got my name in the industry was by writing for the greats I studied and, revealing my own flaws of how I was actually a huge screw up and I knew nothing about business. And then, the path of destroying my life actually got me here. I'm also taking that risk of like, oh, John's a loser, right? He was a party boy and he was just messing around with drugs. I thought he was a huge scholar. And I'm like, it's the same concept with me. And the reason I wanted to say it's relatable to everyone in the world is because it's the same with making friends or dating. If it's like, Jason's a cool guy, he's actually fun, he's easy to talk to, he's smart, and they find something out, they find something out about you they don't like, and it's like, I actually don't want that person in my life if they're gonna judge me for that. And it's the same with, I think it's very relatable overall. But if you and I carried ourselves like we have no flaws,
right.
Any woman would want to date me, or anyone would want to do business with me. It's hit that gray area of like, you don't really want all of that. The ones who see the flaws as strengths are the ones I really want to work with or want to be with or whatever, and they're best for me. And the ones who don't resonate that, business, professionally, clientele wise, are the ones who probably will be a pain and not worth it.
Right. Okay. Awesome. All right. Well, let's talk about conversion rate optimization, CRO, a little bit here. I often talk about one of the things that I say is the more you charge, the higher the level you can solve the problem at, right? If I charge $300 for a website, it's probably going to be a templated thing where I'm changing your logo, phone number, company name, address, and I'm out of there, right? I personally will not do that. That's too low of a level to solve a problem. If I charge $18,000 for a website, well, now I'm able to do some custom things, right? I'm able to do custom copywriting, probably able to throw in a photo shoot in there because we're going to need a lot of custom photos. I'm going to be able to do a custom design just for you. And here's another secret, folks. I might be able to hire another expert I know to help me with the hook, right? Some say I do this all the time. There's a little old guy in New Zealand who I hire quite often, right? And he helps me come up with hooks. Why should I do it myself? And the combination is really, really great. So when it comes to CRO, we can solve it at what we would probably call, John and me, the boring level, like, well, let's change this button shape and this color and stuff like that. Or there's another level, which you might call business building CRO. Let's talk to us about that.
Yeah, well, I kind of just narrowed it down to kind of call it that, or copy and conversion optimization, which is the mix between the two. Part of it is ironically putting together everything I mentioned and starting back from that diabetes, the insulin device company I initially mentioned, the FDA registered one, where I'm continuing to help them build a business from the ground up. It was a combination of everything. It was, we're split testing the advertorials. We're going to experiment with the type of pictures we use, where to put the calls to action, which is great. It's necessary. Some people will build businesses off of, I'll optimize your CRO, and it's little things like that. But the way I do it is I'm not just going to look at that. We got the takeaways from that, but we're going to look at the takeaways from the email sequence that I created. Mm-hmm. Every little subject line that got great open rates, I'm going to dissect. Was it something, a cliffhanger? Was it curiosity-based subject line?
I said?
Yeah. Was it something cool I said? Like, yeah. Were you into that cool thing I said? Basically, if they were, we're going to repeat that. Mm-hmm. And if there was things that turned them off, was it clickbaity that it ended with ... That's the type of copy we're never going to use. And starting with a simple email sequence and dissecting it, the ones that performed well, we saw a drop off because in the second email, we started to promote an upsell. We saw a drop off because this one was super long copy with no pictures. The button, the style of copy and the page layout, and all these little things are super important. But you could literally start dissecting how to build a company from one email sequence to a few Facebook ads, and then use that knowledge to scale up. And you can do it lean and mean, because if you dissect one email sequence and it's, hey, we got a lot of engagement from teaching this stuff, and we got long-term openings because we only pitched 3 times out of 7 emails, that tells us a lot about how to continue, right? That means people want to learn from us. They don't care too much about pictures or whatever. They actually buy more when we pitch them less. They respond more to subject lines that are, direct. And that basically gives us the premise of how to scale an entire brand. And if we take that into Facebook ads, and it's like, let's use that same philosophy. Do they like conversational copy? It's like, we take what we know from here, we're not going to pitch it super hard. Then we test a Facebook ad, and every single one is pretty OCD. We test 3 Facebook ads, and the ones that got the highest click-through rates were actually the ones that had emojis and a conversational opening, like reality check. And the ones that did worse were boring and professional. So that's like optimizing every single way you write, every single sentence you write, every single thing you don't write. And then on top of the optimization of what do they like visually and all that good stuff. And you could literally build that's the ones who have it down pat. It comes down to 3 things. It's not just, if you boil that down, it comes down to 3 things. That's brand voice. How do we write and speak and market to people? And how do we say it? And then it's conversions. How aggressively do we go for the sale? How do we actually close the deal? Then there's value. So it's how much do we teach? What do we teach? So the ones that really have that down, where it's systematic from 6 to 7 to 8 figures, from what I've seen, the ones that are 8-figure levels and sustain it are the ones who have that down to art and science. The whole, how do we get there, was the CRO plus the copy optimization. And it's the fine balance between brand voice, conversions, and value. So that's the ironic part. And companies can do this earlier on. Or there's companies who dial it in, and it's like, we actually don't need 20 people. We just need a 5-person team now, because we got this down,
Okay. Yeah. You mentioned that here in your notes, a lean and mean without a large team.
Did it rhyme like that? I didn't do that on purpose. It's an
accident, but
it's my new
I'll give you a point for it anyway. What if you can't help it? It just comes.
It's my new hook now. It's going to be stuck in your brain forever.
Let's talk about brand voice then. You mentioned that as kind of one of the pillars of CRO for you at this level. How do you discover a client's brand voice? What if they don't know what it is? Like, because they're probably not thinking in those terms too. And then you show up and you're like, hey, I'm here with a skill set. Let's start applying it.
It's that balance. It's always, I always try to take into account their personal goals, right? Like Jason, I know your sales training and all that good stuff you've done for a long time. So you already know your audience and you know yourself. You would probably say they respond more to your style of teaching, maybe your name, and your style of writing. So that's like, okay, Jason is probably big on, I would say, like right off the bat, guessing you'd probably be like split on thirds: brand voice, value, and then conversions, right? Like, I'm not going to sell extremely hard, but I got to sell, I got to write in my voice and style, and I got to teach like in my copy. So that's the style. That's like what I would guess. But let's say, for example, the companies, just stick to the same examples, like the company of Tony Robbins, he's probably like 80% brand voice. If it was Tony Robbins has a new product, oh, cool. And then you read his email and you watch his videos and he sounds like a lawyer. It's like, I'm turned off. I'm not even interested anymore. Like, he had an amazing product I might have bought. He teaches great stuff, but his brand voice was boring. His email read like a lawyer wrote it. And his videos, he was talking like a professor, and I'm completely not interested. It's that reverse engineering. People love his personality. So there's probably better teachers than him around the corner who charge $100 per hour to see him, where someone like Tony Robbins charges $5,000 an hour just to speak to his assistant. But it's the way you can market their personality as a brand voice. And companies like, in your industries, Jason, or the diabetes, the insulin product company I mentioned, that balance was discovering it. I needed to know earlier on, how can we not just scale a company that customers will respond to well, but I want to know how can you build a brand you would love to brag about, right? Because some people will just be like, I'm going to sell this insulin product and I don't care about the brand voice. I'll say really aggressive crap to close the deal. And honestly, later on, I might be embarrassed if my friends and family see it or whatever, versus that fine line of scaling a diabetes or insulin product company of, how do our customers like to hear from us? They like to mix a professional, conversational. They like to hear our backstory too. So that's their brand voice, right? It's not, they probably have a bunch of competitors who are very much like, you don't need to know our backstory. Scientific details.
It's tied, or something. Yeah.
There's like no brand voice there. And it's like, that might be short-term buyers and like people who lose interest and people who don't really care about your company, versus a brand voice that's just going to attract a bunch of people who really love you when you get it down right, and he'll stick with you long term. But it's also the way. Yeah.
It's different though, company to company. I mean, you already surprised me with the answer to the question of dividing it up over the 3 sections. I wasn't expecting that. So folks, don't think that I know the answers to all the questions on the show, right? I'm learning just as much as you are a lot of the time. But I think of like toilet paper. Toilet paper doesn't need a backstory, right? It kind of like, there's Charmin with the bear, I guess. But there's other ones that don't have a mascot, and yet the brand loyalty to these things is pretty huge, right? Unless there's like some massive savings or the store happens to not have any product on the shelf, that's when they'll pick something else. So there is a need for different marketing there. I'm also intrigued by a couple things you said. One about in terms of the voice, sometimes professionalism can turn people off, right, for certain offers, and you need to discover that. And yet always there'll be somebody at the client organization, if it's more than one person, who's like, I don't know, that needs to sound more professional to me, right? And it just makes my head explode, because I'm like, well, let's test it and find out, right? Before you don't know, I don't know, right? And something that I feel I need to bring up is most split testing done by amateurs, you get nowhere near an N number, a sample size large enough to be statistically relevant. You just have some data, right? So it takes a lot more at-bats to find that out. Those are a couple fascinating little details there that you brought up. You've got a note in here, don't baby them clients or enable them. Talk to us about that.
Let me backtrack on that.
Sure.
What was the context of that?
I think we were talking, like, we talked a little bit about structuring copywriting deals, and we talked a bit about that earlier on, and I'm coming back around to it to explain to newer copywriters what kind of approach should you have, what do you expect, how do you treat people. If you're not going to swagger and dinosaur tail thump about how awesome you are, as I like to say, then what does it mean to not baby them or enable them?
It's that middle ground of the responsibility. It's if I think we've all been there. I've had clients do it too. If it was, here's a strategy, I have this idea, I have this sale I want to rerun or something, or a special offer, didn't convert that well in the past, and I look at it and it's like, your VSL, you don't even have one. Let's do like a quick VSL up top. People want to see your voice, they want to hear you, and we're still going to stick with copy. So that's the two NLP, like the submodalities of visual, kinesthetic, auditory. So it's like you need a visual, which is your VSL and you talking. The auditory is them listening, and the copy is visual and auditory or whatever. So things like that. And then it's enabling them would be, okay, I'm going to redo all of this for you or help you redo it, and then run it, and then let's see how it performs. And then if they get it and they're just worried, I don't think we need this video sales letter. Actually, I changed my mind. This copy's like too long. I'm just going to delete a bunch of it and then run it. And then that's babying them, where it's, you just freaked out because you worried too much about how you might come across because you're thinking about yourself and not your customers. So babying them would be like, okay, just delete it all and let's run it. Like, oh shoot, we messed up. I think that's babying them. Not babying them is just not enabling them. It's just, we're going to run it as is. You're going to let your customers and your sales do the talking. Yeah. And then it does well. And part of it is also, I think part of babying, that's such a negative term, but I guess a part of enabling in that sense, not to sound condescending, but it's also the emotional aspect. Sometimes it's, shoot, we did really, really well. We want to do another promo. We want to launch this new offer. We're going to spend 6 figures on Facebook ads this month. And enabling is like, okay, yeah, let's do it all. At the same time, it's actually just spend 10 more K on the same offer on Facebook ads. It's getting too overzealous. So that I think that's against enabling. And if something doesn't do well, it's also taking responsibility and looking at the factual elements instead of getting emotional, because it's so easy to get emotional when a promo fails. And I think enabling is like, let's just dwell on the emotions versus, did we say something? Did we use a 10-minute VSL when the last promo performed better with a 1-minute one? Did we go extremely aggressive for the sale? Or did we like dwell on our brand voice? We wanted it to sound super brandy like, and it didn't sell. So I think that would be enabling. It's just dwelling on, let's just spend a bunch of money, or let's just not freak out, but let's just delete a bunch of stuff because we're worried.
Changes.
Or we did really well. Let's just get overzealous. I think that's the whole world of internet marketing. And that's a good job of, a strategic advisor, a copywriter, or a partner, is to get away from that. It's we all get caught up in those kinds of things. So that's my definition of enabling. I don't think babying is actually a great term, but
okay. Let's kind of finish up with this then, John. Why should a client hire you or me as opposed to some young hotshot who promises the world? Won't they be a lot cheaper and almost as good?
I think guys like me and you, it's not just the experience talking. We can say stuff about our track record, which is true, right? I've done well in multiple 8 figures in sales of really great names who speak really great things about me. I know, Jason, you've had a lot of experience. You've worked with guys who led Dan Kennedy's companies, and remember the old school direct response. You've taught people many, many years ago. But I think another sign is the demonstration of expertise. Because it's, if I'll lay things out strategically, it's not just all about the copy, but it's the big picture. I think that's a sign of someone who's knows what the hell they're talking about, and it could go beyond the copy to a bigger promo, or shoot, this is really strategic stuff. And I think guys like you and me, for sure, and the way I like to operate is if I'm not that confident in your niche, or if I don't think I'm the right person, or we might not be a great fit for each other, and that's also a positive sign, because it's like I might, and sometimes I'll just, we have a potential project on the table, and I'll just say, you know what, we'll start small, and I might not like you, or you might not like me, or I actually believe in your company, but at the end of the day, you might not like me. or vice versa, right? I think that we can do well, but you might not be a good fit for me. I think that's a sign of high integrity and a sign of experience to be willing to walk away and be genuine. I think it's a sign of, I don't know, just go back to dating, right? And if it's if you're looking for the girl of your dreams or something, and if either of you are like not screening that other person, or if you are and not showing it, if it's like you find a girl of your dreams or the guy of your dreams, or whoever's watching this, and you're talking to that person and there's no disqualification, right? It's like it's not I want a family or I want someone who is emotionally stable. It's just like, oh, you're pretty and you're fun, you're beautiful or whatever, you're cool to be around. You're the one. The one you really want is going to be the one who will be like, hey, I have flaws, whatever. I'm a single dad or something. I'm fun to be around, but I can be too spontaneous. Like, you want that kind of person who's going to like reveal their flaws and give you the chance to walk away, because you're like, that person knows his value. He knows he has a lot to offer, but it might not work out, right? Even if it's a gorgeous woman who's like, oh my God, she's everything I wanted. But it's like, I'll take you on immediately. But she's the one who's like, I'm not going to wait because I might not walk away because I don't like you, but I'll let you walk away because you might not like me. And I think that's someone who really understands what they got and who has that authenticity of like, hey, this could be amazing, right?
Right.
But one of us has to be willing to walk away, and that's okay, because I know what I'm worth and I have the experience. But if it's not going to work out, it's not going to work out. And I think that's not really a thing clients screen for. I think good copywriters can learn from that. Some already do that all day long. But I would encourage potential clients and business owners to actually screen for that too. Is this guy actually, could he ever say no from an authentic standpoint? Of course, the money, right? It's like, I'll pay him 5K, but he wants 10. Shoot, he might walk away. It's also like, aside from even talking about money, would this copywriter or consultant or advisor walk away because of the dynamic or the project? And if they would, I think that's also a sign, right? It's also track record, skill set. Man, this guy's amazing. He's a great fit. But if he would walk away despite the money, then that's probably a person with very high integrity. So
Right. Yeah. The very first thing I look for, somebody comes to me with an offer, an idea, the niche. It's got to be in a niche I'm comfortable with, right? If it's B2B software, financial, CRM type stuff, accounting software, space defense, obviously, that kind of thing. And even maybe art and history I could do. I'd be kind of excited about that. But if it's like, apple pies and stuff like that, it's just not the right fit for me, candy and stuff. It's, there's stuff I'm going to look at and go, that's not me. Number two, I'm going to ask them, so what's your traffic source? And if they tell me, well, I don't know, I'm going to hire an expert and we're going to figure that out, it's an automatic no. If you have no idea where that traffic source is coming from, it probably means you don't know who your ideal customer is. So you don't have your avatar, right? So it probably took me 10 years, Jon, before I realized, gee, I shouldn't take money just because it's being waved under my nose to do copywriting, right? Because I did.
Yeah. There's a temptation for sure.
Yeah. Well, and you want to eat, right? But to get the best results, stick to stuff that you feel good about. And then start structuring these longer term deals, right? That's also very different, because then you're not so eager for the money. It becomes about something else. It becomes about that agreement about, hey, this is good for both of us over the long term. I'm going to help you. You're going to pay me out consistently over time. Another thing that happened when it comes to hiring us over a younger, more, eager, hotshot type copywriter who's going to tell you they could do everything. Back in my internet marketing days, so if we go back to like 2011 through 2016, maybe something like that, right? I got hired as the pinch hitter, that's a baseball term, to come and clean up somebody's screw up on a launch, okay? And often it was the writer who would come and get me to rewrite the VSL or rewrite the sales letter, because they had written something for a launch, the launch was on, and what they wrote didn't convert, and they were like, oh my gosh, I need my butt saved now. Let's go get Jason Kanigan, right? And I would write something and it would save the launch, right? And the funny thing is, nearly all the time, the product creators, the owners of the thing, never knew. It was that writer presented my work as their own, and you know, and I helped them save face, right? Like they saved the day. That's fine. But you know, when that happens several times a year over a number of years, you start to see a trend, right? It's like,
Right.
okay, this matters, right? This experience matters, and this checking for things that your eager newbie is probably not going to do so consistently. So let's finish with this, Jon. Who do you want to meet, and how can they connect with you?
I mean, ideally, I take on 1 to 3 clients per year. Like I mentioned, when it's a right fit, you know, I'm confident, and we try each other out. The company that with the FDA registered technology, and I still do personal growth and the coaching, and you know, it's coaching on sales or entrepreneurship. Those are the type of people I want to continue working with. So the health marketers, you know, if you're a coach or consultant in personal growth or entrepreneurship, those are the type of people I want to continue working with. I do want to look at longer term relationships. Sometimes it is, hey, I probably know how to go from 6 figures to 7 to 8, help you get there. And the systematized way to do it. You know, the ones that are at 8 figures usually have a lot of this figured out, but they need consistency, they need systematization, they need it done with a leader. And sometimes it is scaling on a lower budget. You know, you don't need you spend $1, you get $10 out of it, instead of you spend $1 and you get $1.50 out of it. And there's scientific ways to work there. Those are the people I still want to, you know, connect with and work with. Of course, there's other copywriters I support on many ways, but the main way is I do like to help people build their businesses, and that's kind of still my forte. And yeah, I think integrity is a really big one too. There's always the temptation to cut corners or go extremely, you know, the brand voice conversions value thing, to go all about conversions. And I can't really do that kind of stuff that much anymore when it's integrity is a big thing for me.
Right. Good stuff. How can they communicate with you?
Yeah, if you go to copyblueprints.com, just like sounds, copy, like copywriting, and then blueprints.com. At the top, I actually have it's called Authority Sales Page Swipe File. I really didn't want to put it together because it has some of the best stuff I mentioned. It has swipe files for some copy I wrote that really created home runs over the past decade, and some of them actually copy for like real life celebrities or internet celebrities and stuff you'll actually enjoy studying. You know, it's never encouraged people to swipe that stuff verbatim. It's been running for many years, so really modeling and studying off of it. It's just even exemplifies some of the stuff we already talked about. And it's not just a swipe file, but it's also, I actually have a video training vault where I'm reverse engineering some campaigns like in real time on my computer screen, actually writing them. So feel free to download that, you know, teach yourself. If you're a copywriter, you can teach yourself, or if you're in a team, or if you own a business, teach yourself, delegate it to your company, teach your team. Other than that, it's you could email me directly. It's Jon, Jon, at copyblueprints.com. And other than that, you know, it's also the collaboration aspect. Maybe we can connect and we just chit chat and have a virtual cup of coffee or whatever.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, Jon, appreciate you doing this.
Of course. Thanks, Jason. I really appreciate your time.
All right, thanks for joining us. I hope this was an educational and insightful discussion for you, particularly if you're a business owner who hasn't heard about copywriting before. I know I got many years into the business world, and copywriters just weren't something that corporate really knew about. You know, it was something that these scrappy-do type people trying to start businesses in their basements usually use, but it's become a lot more widespread over the last 20 years. So if you want to find out whether Jon is a fit for you, reach out to him. You might want to reach out to me as well. I can tell you, if you're not working with a copywriter right now, you are throwing away a lot of business. All right, there's a ton of conversion that could be happening that you're not taking advantage of if you haven't been working with a copywriter. You know, there's 2 things necessary in every business: traffic and conversion. And a copywriter is a huge amount of power when it comes to understanding and taking advantage of conversion. All right, and that means more buyers, more revenue for you. All right, thanks for listening. I'll catch you next time.